We're going to go ahead and get started. This is just a community briefing, a moment to gather, because as someone who grew up in Rogers County, being from Chelsea, now living in Verdigris, I've connected more with some of the community and more with some people that are strangers that I probably never would have because of a thing called Project Mustang. And if there's anything good that came out of this, it is getting to meet all of you guys and just getting to connect and further see how much we do care about this community, how much we care when it comes down to what happens to our land, what happens to our natural resources, what happens to our judicial system. And so thank you guys for coming. This is, my name's Amber Rodriguez, by the way, and I don't want to take full credit for anything. I'm kind of here independently in my role. I don't represent any group, any organization. I'm not going to push any ideas past just facts and information that I've found. But it's not just efforts of myself. This is efforts of a lot of other people who have submitted open records requests, who have done research, who have worked in these roles and provided history of better example or precedent cases in the judicial system. So it's not one effort. I just feel like the things that I've seen make it clear that this feels more like a bigger picture issue that I think a lot more people need to pay attention to, versus just like a divisive line of Claremore not being able to get behind industrial development or being able to move forward with a new idea or a new technological advancement. So when I see people coming and connecting with groups, trying to educate them and ultimately speaking and then getting arrested and then labeled a certain way, and when I see it draw a certain negative attention through other channels, I don't want to see that for Claremore. This is not any attempt to, I didn't go into this looking for any kind of issue or problem with anyone on our city council, anybody in the government, any kind of elected officials. I just wanted to know, tell me about Project Mustang. What is this? Because what we're seeing on Facebook is not in any history of city council, minutes, agendas, that kind of thing. So I'm going to try to kind of walk through a bit of a timeline, a bit of the numbers that I feel are relevant to us, specifically to Claremore, and then I'm going to hand it off to someone who can kind of explain a bit of a bigger picture issue and how that our issue here bridges some of those gaps. To start, I'm going to give you all of the key players that you need to know and be able to follow and understand how their boards and how their governments and jurisdictions operate. So unless you're probably at doctorate level in a government thesis, this is hard to understand. So it's a validation that keeping track of some of the channels and some of the bureaucratic map and identifying the "you are here" point, it is a challenge. And there's no fault to anybody here if this is your first time feeling like you're paying attention to what's happening in city council meetings, if this is one of your first times that you've been interested in speaking out at any board of adjustment meetings or city planning. These are complicated systems. We all live independent lives past this, so we've done a lot of the research into this. The important things I think we need to consider for the upcoming meeting on Monday are the members of the Local Development Review Committee. Now, the Local Development Act is Oklahoma state law, and there's a history of other acts, or there's a list of their actions and things that they're able to do within that, and one of those is to establish a tax incentive district. And that is what they have been voting on more recently and what the council will vote on this coming Monday. The recommendation to the council came from the committee which makes up the heads of all of the impacted taxing entities. So when I was explaining this to my 12-year-old niece, I explained it if the city manager is managing a ranch and they're considering all of the different fence lines, they're considering all of the different jurisdictions and the boundaries, they need to meet with all of the taxing fence lines. They need to meet and have all of the people, because whether or not that is in city limits, whether or not that is industrial zoned, it still impacts the school district, the fire district, the water district, and beyond that, there's maps to the waterways, the aquifers, the water source, and so there's a lot of different considerations within that. These guys have already made the recommendation. We've got a history that shows the public became aware that this committee was being formed. Nothing about a data center was mentioned, knowing that it was for a data center. The heads of these entities then met and received the presentation and the slide deck from the developers, from Beal, before anybody in the public ever got to see it, because that happened back in October of 25 or December of 25, when that committee didn't meet again until March of this year. So when we see introduction of projects happening months before it ever comes to the public eye, and I'm not talking about a proposal, I'm not talking about you're gonna come and present the idea of an Aldi's or an HTO, and we're gonna keep that out of the public eye because actual NDA, actual business practice considerations, which they would be applicable. One of the first things I did whenever I found out about Project Mustang and I went to that first city council meeting in January is I talked to local business owners and I said, did you have to sign an NDA? Some of them said yes, so I had to understand that is in a lot of ways a normal business practice. The length, the application, and the level of council approval, which is made up, those are representatives of your ward, those are your elected officials. So when they're making decisions and having secret executive, I say secret, they're having executive sessions months and months and months leading up until the first time the public is made aware, and then telling us that that's the first time that they've even ever heard of it, the night before having met with the company as well, getting the same project. There's just, it seems to be a pattern of coaching the ref before ever getting to actually play ball in the open meetings. Like they want to make sure they're gonna, or coaching the jury rather, before they're taking this to court, because they want to make sure they're gonna have that consensus. And there's a lot of history of just concerns around the Open Meetings Act, the Open Records Act, and I don't think the small venue for our most recent meetings have been accommodating whatsoever, and I don't think that was a coincidence. I have a picture of the most relevant, what I think are the most relevant meetings. The reason I put May 21st, 2025 is because that is when our Unified Development Code was updated, and I just think if you go and you watch the video and you consider in May of 25, this was all for a data center, and some of the actions that take place during that meeting, you can see there is a big lack of the detail, a big lack of the big picture, that this is for one single private developer that has exact districts, exact project plans, exact square footage. And we have, the laws that put in place the zoning applicability also state that it cannot be arbitrary. It cannot be for the benefit of one single project, of one single private developer. And that's exactly what happened in May of 25. We move forward, we see some other questionable concerns. January is that first meeting that I went to following the social media post where our city manager said no skin in the game. If anybody was at RSU, we can, the one thing I would say to watch from the video at RSU past the arrest and what made national news is the response and the questions from our city council and the answers that they received. Because that was embarrassing for me to watch, especially to some of the women specifically on the council, because they were dismissed, and I was literally holding the documents. I know that some of the documents were presented to them that said the opposite of what they were claiming. That it was, they had the answers in their hand, and the questions that they were asking were, the answers they were getting were so different. And so that's really hard to see. It's embarrassing to see. May 4th was the more recent TID meeting for the Tax Incentive District, and then May 18th, that's our next one. These are some highlights about Claremore's rates, because we may have a big claim that this is not going to impact our rates. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is the goal of this, and part of the Tax Incentive District timeline will be to put on-site power generation. That's part of the behind the meter bill, and we'll kind of get into some of that later. But if I take that part out of the equation, and I think that it's not going to have any impact towards the generation supply, I still don't think this will generate revenue for Claremore, because our industrial rates and what we have set up right now is for the city of Claremore to truly serve for our resident customers and the different customer classes. It's an example of subsidizing, in my opinion. When we have, I'll get to these charts, let me think. This is what you can see on the city budget, on their online website, when it talks about the utility revenue by fund. That's a useless chart. So I got those real numbers from some of our records requests, and I looked at how much they're consuming and how much revenue they're generating, how much of the pie they're eating, how much they're paying back to the city. If the data center is going to eat up this huge, the equivalent of how many different industrial buildings, what are we going to be making? And I noticed immediately an error in the spreadsheet, and I highlighted it. I tried to talk to the city about it. They didn't want to talk to me. I ended up getting a response from the state auditor. They confirmed that it was at minimum an error in the spreadsheet, but I was not at the point to prove, this is the exact formula for the PCA, and here we are now and with the tariffs. But that said, that is mathematically impossible. You are not going to see the exact ratio. If you go and you look at the other cities that GRDA wholesale supplies to, if you go to Cushing's digital budget, if you go to Salisaw's digital budget, they do not have this level of gap. Whenever you fix this ratio and you don't pull it from that column and you fix the ratio, you start to see this is our consumption across customer classes in Claremore. This is the revenue. So if you are on the grid, if you get a monthly power bill, you are the lifeblood of the government budget. The amount of transfers from utility to general funds, I think last year it was over 11 million. Year before that it was 9 million. It's not to say that's totally illegal, or you can have opinions about that either way. I challenge you, though, to compare it to other cities. That's, I think I have another clip on that in a minute. Or I'm sorry, let me go back. I've been talking about this a little too much, maybe. Thought I had our state auditor. We got audited back in 2023, and in the audit they found 15 to 20% higher. And one of the things that the audit reports specifically, and these are all from all these government websites on very available source data, the information the city provided was like, we respectfully disagree that that's possible, because our rates are the same. But when you look at the bills and then you start to actually go into the power cost adjustment, what fluctuates every single month if you're a customer, that is what is going to show the difference regionally, whenever you're getting this, you're paying for this much over 2025 for power, and the people in Sallisaw are paying this much, and the people in Caney Valley are paying this much. It's coming from the exact same source. Whenever they take from GRDA the power cost adjustment, meaning what it takes to generate that fuel, should come and be calculated from what they take from GRDA, because there will be understandably line loss when that power transfers to our delivery stations and then to our grid and our system. But whenever that happens and they bill us, what they bill us and what they make revenue on is not going to be the same as what they buy. But whatever they are determining these rates for and how they are adjusting the subsidization is moving those numbers, moving those lines to say the PCA is not adjusted by what we are taking from this, but what we are selling back. And when those are completely different numbers across customer classes specifically, and you start to think about demand, and you look at the ratios on that pie chart relevant to demand, it makes me ask more questions. It makes me go to the state auditor. And when I started to ask questions, the city manager told the entire city council, this girl, don't talk to her. This is relevant to the vote on Monday. We're gonna have the tax incentive. Everybody's like, this is affecting you in the city, county. It's every single taxpayer across the state, okay? Google alone got almost 35 million in 2025. That is reimbursements. This is part of, if you've ever heard that Oklahoma is a deficit state, if you look that up, I could tell you a good way to fix it. You could start taxing these data centers. When we look at Rogers County alone, we see in 2025, I believe that's when this pulled from, yep, 2025, 1.3 million. And it breaks all those down. That's exempt manufacturing. That's just part of what this data center is going to get, even further with ad valorem. Then we start talking about water, one of the things that's gotten brought up a lot. I argue not a single drop of water needs to go to any of these data centers, because when I look, or if they do, they don't need to go anywhere near Oklahoma. They don't need to go anywhere near farmable land in any kind of way. I think there's a lot better plan and consideration for where we can put some of these things. One of the concerning numbers that I found in my research when I started to say, yeah, okay, but if they use a lot of water, yeah, but like so do other industries, and you know, part of advancement, like move on, right? Okay. So I looked to the Oklahoma Water Resource Board and their plans for the demand and the supply through 2075. That's when I was like, wait a second, we need a whole statewide pause, because in 2035, they have crop irrigation 56.1, livestock 4.3, self-supplied industrial 3.2, or I think another self-supplied 1.8. Oh, whoops. Then we move on. Crop irrigation 54.9, livestock 3.8, self-supply industrial 3.3. But let's look at those numbers a little bit closer on that same chart. In a certain trend, you see a plateau and then a decline. When you think about how much water we want to allocate to crop irrigation and livestock. This same report is 111 pages long, by the way. It breaks down how much water per chicken, literally. This concerns me. This is not the Oklahoma that I think of when I think of growth, when I think of expansion. I don't think of reallocating natural resources to data centers. That might be the end of what I have. This was a Facebook page that a handful of us have kind of put together. Monday, that's what I need you guys, email your city council, let them know we need a bigger space, we need a pause on this. Today, I was also at the courthouse, and I'm just going to talk about this too, because the journalist Ron Durbin, I'm sure you have seen him, heard of him, have different opinions, and I will say when I saw he filed in Rogers County, I immediately checked OSCN, I went to the daily dockets, and I read the filing. And I showed up at the courthouse today for justice because I did not, whether or not I support that man, what he's doing, the statements and in that motion and the petition to stop this based on Open Meetings Act violations, Open Records Act violations, that is 100% true, and I hold evidence from all my records that support those claims, and I provided that as part of what is going on, because whether I agree with his courtroom demeanor from today, I think what is filed on OSCN, it holds weight for what is going on in Claremore. Those are when they were meeting privately, one by one, when they were meeting separately, specifically in groups of two to avoid quorum, and then going back and changing their project plans overnight based on the questions that our city councilman had. That's what happened right before we all saw the thing in February. That's not what, that's what the Open Meetings Act was meant to prevent. And when I'm seeing that exactly, I'm trying to report it to the Attorney General, and I'm trying to raise it with the City Council several times. Did not get crazy, didn't tell anybody, didn't send anybody hateful emails. I did definitely send one impatient, pointed email there at the end, because I can only be gaslit for so long by our government, and I let them know that that's kind of how I was feeling, and the response was, this is slanderous, this is ludicrous, don't listen to anything this person is saying. Every other office, the Attorney General said my claims of the open records denial, said those were valid. State Auditor, when I said this is a formula, this is impossible, said yep, valid. But the city manager says Claremore's got it all figured out. We know how to fix our grid and use this data center, and meanwhile, I'm seeing records that have plans for, I'm not kidding, the size of this is half of what is actually in some of this. We really can't condense it to any kind of project plan, and it should not be on citizens to condense it. So if you guys can reach out to the City Council, let them know we need a bigger space. We need to know what the end goal really is going to look like. If you look at those project plans, I want you to notice there's a little hook that goes out. That is not just to connect for a bridge or connect to any kind of, that is for the rest of plans with more parcels, and there's memorandums of understanding with Owasso Land Trust. There's a lot more questions that need to be answered. So I wanted to give everybody the chance to answer questions or ask questions. If you want to look at emails more in depth, I brought some of it, a lot of it I left at the courthouse today, because whether I agree with some of the stuff that's happening on his video camera, I think what he had in a case filing held weight, Mr. Ron Durbin. So,
my name is Darren Blanchard, and I live in Mounds Creek County. It's in between Sapulpa and Okmulgee near Glenpool. For those that do not know me, I'm the gentleman that was arrested back in February at Rogers State University for speaking too long, or maybe speaking too long on a subject that a certain individual didn't like. It's called viewpoint discrimination. It's in violation of the United States Constitution. And I think most people can recognize what all went on that night. But anyway, I came back here, and I know most of you, or a lot of you, probably about 50% of you, were here on Wednesday. So this is going to be mostly a repeat of what we talked about. But sometimes it kind of helps to hear it again. I got into this discussion as my property in Mounds came back home to be a caretaker for my grandparents to avoid them having to go into a nursing home. One day I would inherit their land, which is about 10 acres. I wanted to go into vegetable, fruit, herb production, so small scale produce production, get it into the local school systems. I'm equidistant between two food banks, the Muskogee Creek Nation and Okmulgee, as well as the Tulsa Food Bank. I've got a really good idea. The soil type's perfect for what it is I want to do. But in 2023, a land agent came by and was wanting to run a high voltage transmission line across the property. And it was advertised as a way to take wind energy from western Oklahoma and get it into other markets. And it would help lower everybody's utility bill. Okay, that sounded too good to be true. I look at the paperwork and I can see within the easement there are plans to add wind turbines, solar panels, battery energy storage systems all along this route. And as we start to dive more into it, we find it's not just one company that's wanting to run a transmission line. There's actually two. And the other one was actually from east central Colorado all the way through northern Oklahoma and into southern Arkansas. So between the two different projects, you're talking about 1,300 miles of high voltage transmission line with surface energy infrastructure, wind turbines, solar panels, et cetera, all along that route. And it's going to need a large customer to take that energy, and that's data centers. And that's why we're here tonight. So that's how I got into this discussion, helping other communities, because I had a little bit of success with fending off that transmission line, helping people in Porter, Oklahoma fight off a 4,900 acre solar project there, as well as people in Coweta with the data center, the same developer you're dealing with in Claremore. So Bill Infrastructure. And we have to realize that a data center is going to need land, water, and power. Power is the big one, right? That's probably the significant limiting factor. Power is going to come in two forms: dispatchable and non-dispatchable power or energy. That's the industry term. Okay, a data center does not stop. 24/7, 365 days of the year. They don't get off on holidays, okay? So it's going to need a continuous supply of power in the form of coal, natural gas, to generate electricity, or nuclear or whatever, okay? And then you have non-dispatchable, and we'll talk about both of these in just a second. But dispatchable, natural gas, that's the trend. That's what is going to go in, more than likely, just south of the Project Mustang data center. And what we can look at is they're going to be in the neighborhood of about 400 megawatts. The data center, I believe, is also expected to be in the neighborhood of 400 megawatts. And so it's a natural gas combustion turbine to generate electricity. It's very efficient. And the unique thing about Oklahoma is we have some new laws that are coming on the books. This one just got passed in July of 2025. That's Senate Bill 480, or what's called behind the meter, or BTM. Other states have something similar. That's what allows a large industrial user like a data center to generate their own energy on site. Okay, and that's what we're seeing with a lot of these developments. And I don't have a problem with a gas plant. What I have a problem with is when the developer and our city officials are hiding or withholding this information from the public. Okay, because it's one thing to live next to a data center, but it's a whole other thing to live next to a data center plus a gas plant. Okay, and they will not want to tell you that because there'll be more opposition, more resistance. All right. And that's unique because when we did these open records requests, we found that there was a company by the name of Solar Turbines. It's nothing to do with solar panels, okay? That threw us for a loop. So we looked it up because we were curious. They cleared an easement through GRDA, and we're like, what's Solar Turbines? So we do what everybody does. We throw it into Google, and we find out that's a subsidiary of Caterpillar, who is specializing in electric generation from natural gas designed to deliver power to AI data centers. And then we were kind of curious, okay, what other sort of land records do we have here? Because we can see there's an easement that's being cleared. So we put it into Rogers County land records. We found that Solar Turbines acquired the Lufkin property in September of 2025. What's interesting is landowners in and of the area have reported that Oklahoma Natural Gas started approaching them for a pipeline easement in October of 2025. So just a month after that Solar Turbines acquires the property, Oklahoma Natural Gas is trying to get an easement. And here's what's interesting. We had a lady Monday, May 4th, that brought this up in public comment. Monday, May 4th, she brings it up. Said, here's the property deed, here's the easement, and it's kind of funny, no one is talking about this. The city's not disclosing this to the public. That's Monday, and Wednesday, lo and behold, on the Lufkin property, there's a Solar Turbine sign that appears. It's like a vinyl covering, a temporary sign. So word got out, and they had, the toothpaste is out of the tube. They had to make up for it at that point. So this is what that looks like. This is in Ripley, Oklahoma, Payne County, near Stillwater. And that's about a 40-acre site there for a 420 to 440 natural gas combustion turbine electric generation power plant. Okay? So that's pretty large infrastructure, and that would go just outside of the 300 acres that they're proposing for the data center. That's dispatchable energy. That's what the data center has got to have. They cannot deny that, okay? And that's important because you've got a little bit of an environmental impact to those surrounding landowners, but the biggie is the city's not disclosing that, and the company's not disclosing that to the public because it's being sold on this idea that the city can create revenue based off of franchise fees, utility franchise fees. What that means is they act like the toll booth collector on the transmission line. The electricity that flows through the transmission line, the city's going to get a percentage, 1%, 2%, 3%, somewhere in that neighborhood. Once they put in this gas plant, that the data center is not using, or at least not using very much of the electricity flowing through the transmission line. So the city's going to have that revenue stream of 2% utility franchise fees. It's going to be cut. So at that point, what stream of revenue, or what is the revenue stream that the city's getting? Once that gas plant goes online, that's gone. Okay, the property taxes are abated. Yeah, there's some money going to the schools, the health department, the VOTEC, et cetera. But that revenue stream is gone. That's important, and they are not disclosing that. They know that. How do I know? Because here's why. Here's text message communication from City Manager John Ferry. So this is a text back in February, about a week after I was arrested, to Sarah Krulowitz. We'll have a picture of her in just a second, of Beal Infrastructure. So he sends a text, and I'll read it out. It says, is Beal's understanding that day one, that's the first day the data center goes online, day one is firm power service from the substation, and day two is when usage of supplemental supply or supplemental source starts. That's going to be your gas plant and the other energy infrastructure. I'm on with GRDA, so he's on a phone call with GRDA, and their understanding is that day one is the first 100 megawatts that can be supplied by a simple connection to the existing transmission line. Existing transmission line. So that means there's going to be more transmission lines coming. We'll talk about that. So here's the reply from Sarah Krulowitz. Day one unlocks 100 megawatts of transmission capacity. Day two, which is going to be your gas plant, unlocks greater than 100 megawatts of transmission capacity. Okay? So John Ferry says, okay, perfect. Just want to make sure we are all saying the same thing. I asked y'all last time how many of you were there on May 4th. I won't ask you again, but what was said was John Ferry gave a flat out lie during that meeting. He said day one, there's 250 megawatts of capacity. His communication plus prior emails that we've been able to see says there's only 100 megawatts on day one. So that means they're going to have to add additional supply to make this work, and that's going to be in the form of a dispatchable energy source in the form of a natural gas electric generation power plant. So he's not telling the truth. Okay, that's a problem in my book. So your non-dispatchable energy, that's going to be wind turbines. In Lincoln County, the area of Chandler, Davenport, Stroud, the north half of I-44, we've seen the spec sheets. What they're proposing there are 680-foot tall wind turbines with a 100-foot blade tip Okay, so I don't know what size that's going to be here. Maybe they're only 400 feet, but chances are the wind speed in Lincoln County and Rogers County and our northeast counties are going to be similar. So they're probably going to be that size. And then solar, ground-mounted solar panels, utility-scale solar panels. Not talking about solar panels on people's roofs. These are multi-thousand-acre solar projects. I mentioned Porter, Oklahoma, Wagner County. That one was 4,900 acres for a 400-megawatt solar power plant. It's a huge footprint in terms of land. And then what comes with all this? Batteries. Battery Energy Storage Systems, BESS, the acronym. They only hold energy for 4 hours. It's a continual use cycle battery, so it's not like a battery that goes to your cordless drill. And you'll see a note on there that says price arbitrage. Basically what that means is buy low, sell high. Okay, energy that is traded or sold at 2:30 p.m. is at a different price than 6:30 p.m. demand. So what happens is, particularly with wind and solar, it's excessively produced. And a lot of times they got to get it off the grid, quite literally. Sometimes whoever inherits that energy, sometimes they will actually be paid to take it, or it's traded in the negative rate, oftentimes reduced rates. That's the advantage of the batteries. They can get excess energy at 2:30 p.m., turn around at 6:30 p.m., sell it at a higher rate. And they're going to put battery energy storage systems at the data center. So it's not like a backup battery on your computer. It's a whole different type of thing. Okay, so this is mostly to our north. Claremore's at the very bottom. Sorry for those on the left side. The podium kind of blocks it out. But I've got a mapping there. We'll come back to this. But the green dots are wind turbines. The orange are solar. There is a yellow on there. That's a solar plus a battery. And then there's also a gas plant that's going to be put in place near Uluga Lake Dam. So that's a lot of energy infrastructure that's going into part of it, Rogers County, but to our foremost northeast counties of Oklahoma. Okay. And we talked about the battery energy storage systems, and what you don't see on there, with the exception of that gold dot, you don't see any batteries on there. But I can tell you right now, when you have a solar project or a wind turbine project, there will be batteries. So it's just they haven't put them on there on the map yet. Project Clydesdale, that's Owasso, North Tulsa County, area of Owasso, Sperry. This first dot here, this first purple dot, battery energy storage system, that's on site. So they say that they fund the substation. They'll put in a new substation. That substation is 10 acres, and then that battery energy storage system is 20 acres. And it's right next to the substation. More than likely, that's going to be paid for by the ratepayers. Now, there's a new law on the books that aims to help with that. I'll believe it when I see it. That's how new laws work, right? And then right across the street, there's a second battery energy storage system, okay? So Project Clydesdale has at least 2 battery energy storage systems in play, but wait, there's more. In Sperry, there's another battery energy storage system. But wait, there's more. In Maisie, there's a solar project and a battery energy storage system going in. All 4 of those batteries are feeding the substation at Project Clydesdale. That cannot be denied, okay? And again, that's likely going to be afforded by the ratepayers. If the project itself is not, the transmission lines to go from point A to point B, that's going to be afforded by ratepayers. So here we are back at this. I want you to look at the area of Chelsea, and I'll step away so the people on the left can see. You see a green dot and an orange dot kind of stationed together. Okay? They had a meeting, I think it was this week. I'm confused. I've been traveling all over the place. About Hickory Creek Wind. And you can zoom in on the bottom. They have leased over 50,000 acres for that project. I think the number I've heard is 56,000, okay, not that we're counting. But they also have Hickory Creek Solar. So basically what you're going to have is an area that's scattered with solar panels and then wind turbines, sprinkled in between, okay? And so as you can see there, look at the kind of the grass, the vegetation underneath. It's pretty sparse, and I'll kind of touch on that in just a second because plants need something called sunlight, right? So hopefully these videos work. And we'll get to it, yeah. So this is Mayes County, all right? I've got some videos that I'll show you in just a second. So everybody points to Google and Prior. So here's what they have coming. So again, the orange dots are solar, yellow is solar plus battery, the purple are batteries. There are 9 solar power plants either in development or in the queue, and this is a mapping from the Southwest Power Pool, and then 9 battery energy storage systems. So like I said, when there's a solar power plant, there's a battery that comes with it. You can rest assured. So each of those dots, at least the orange and the yellow, is going to represent anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 acres. So my biggest concern is, what impact does this have on the cost of food? Okay, so because at some point you start to run out of land for cows. Okay, at some point you start to impact the cost of hay, which our cattle producers need. That's actually already going on just based on one project that I have some video of here. Yes, it's going to work. Thank you. So this is near Shodo. It's actually in the Shodo district. This is one section of land. There's the collector substation, as they call it. And so this is about 600 or so acres. And this is one of 5 videos for one of those dots. And there are 9 that are coming. So like I said, that's about one section of land, 600 acres, and there's 5 of these videos, so 5 times 600 is about 3,000. That represents one of those dots. See that water standing there? Okay, I'll come back to that in just a second. It wasn't like it rained that morning or the night before. That's from a few days prior. Okay, so you can see on the other side of the road right there, there's more of them into the back. Okay. I can sense a problem coming down the road when you talk about food security, available housing, affordable housing. Okay, at some point that impacts our food security and available housing. Those are both measures of national security. All right, stormwater runoff. I mentioned that standing water. This is Bandera County. They put in a solar power plant. These are the non-participating landowners. Look what it's causing to them. This is in Virginia. No one denying there's a problem. Stormwater runoff. Look at that water holding. Okay, here's another one, except that's not a solar power plant, that's in Porter, Oklahoma. The Wagner County Commissioners voted that thing down June 16th on a Monday. They got about a 4-inch rain the Saturday before, just 2 days before, and we got this great video to show the county commissioners these solar power plants are going to cause problems of stormwater runoff. If we litter 4,900 acres in Porter, Oklahoma, which a huge portion of it's in a floodplain. See what that storm did to the road with 1.8 million solar panels and 64 utility scale inverters? We're going to have some problems with stormwater runoff. Okay, so those non-participating landowners, there's impacts to them, okay? And I'll kind of wrap up right here. I'm gonna write about 20 minutes almost, just under. The issue is what causes that stormwater runoff, that erosion, like you could see in Virginia, that red soil just rushing all over the place, is the developer strips the topsoil, they store it, and the idea is reduce compaction. So the workers can go in there, the heavy equipment can go in there, and then when they're done with construction, they return the topsoil. The issue is it's going to take approximately 3 years before that vegetation will become re-rooted in that work area. And here's this map. This is the transition zone. Oklahoma and southern Kansas are in a unique climate environment, okay? There's other states in the transition zone, but Oklahoma and Kansas are unique. That's why Oklahoma State University, Kansas State University partner with turfgrass and forage grass research. Because in Oklahoma, there are only 2 shade-tolerant grasses that can survive in our climate. And that's tall fescue and perennial rye. However, when it comes late spring, summer, early fall, those are going to die out unless they're extensively irrigated. And if you're going to put ground-mounted solar panels out there and you're expecting a vegetation to grow, it's going to have to be a shade-tolerant grass. There's only 2, and they have to be extensively irrigated. And I guarantee you the developer's not going to run 4,900 acres of drip irrigation. And it'll have to be drip because you got ground mounted panels. A pivot sprayer, overhead sprayer is not going to work. So they're not going to do that. So what's going to happen is you're going to have, like that one picture I showed you, sparse vegetation that's growing, mostly weeds. And then you're going to have more and more erosion. So what will happen is you're going to have issues, and the developer will have to come in and xeriscape it, put in gravel or rock to make sure that we've got something to help with drainage, okay? So, and the biggest problem I have, and I said this the other night, forgot to say it, is when you take a community like Porter, you're handicapping its ability for future residential expansion. So you're really not developing the rural economy. And the other thing is, that's 1.8 million solar panels, 64 utility scale inverters that are coming from Southeast Asia. And you're putting that on land that could be used for agriculture production or residential development. I have concerns with that. So I don't see how that makes America great again, okay? When those products are not coming from here. You look at the inverters, they've actually been able to isolate. They have kill switches in them that are rogue communication devices that can disrupt pacemakers, and a lot of people are on those, and actually can shut down components to the grid. So if this power expansion in the form of solar panels is to help secure our grid, and we have found communication devices in them from China who we're competing against that can shut down our grid, that doesn't speak to national security. I have concerns about that. So I just want to kind of show you one thing right here. Notice I'm wearing that same shirt in the picture. I traveled from Oklahoma City today. I was at a developer-hosted town hall in Piedmont last night. And it's the same line of trying to choose my words carefully here, malarkey, that whether it's in Piedmont, whether it's in southeast Montana where I've been, whether it's in Wichita, and just speaking on the phone with people in Texas and Arkansas and Arizona, it's the same story over and over and over. These communities are being gaslit, and I've got a problem with that. And I can't say too much, but you can read what's on that signage. And what I will tell you is show up Monday night, and I will tell you why I was there. Because I have real concerns with what has went on in the community of Coweta, and I am fearful that it has went on here in Claremore as well. Because the common denominators is for sure bill infrastructure, and then we can have a disagreement, but the other one is a crooked city manager. That's my opinion. I know that has went on in Coweta, and maybe I have a bias because of what happened to me on February 17th, and because of all the communications I've seen where what is being said behind closed doors, whether it's through email or text, it's not being presented to you, to the community. Okay, that's the problem I have with everything. So I think that's it. So anyway, I think we're going to open it up to question and answer. If you can, there's a microphone. So if you don't want to get up, we might be able to bring it to you. And keep in mind, when you're asking questions, we're not the experts per se, but we've been looking at this stuff for quite a while. And we'll try to answer the questions the best we can.
Can you explain what happened in Coweta?
As far as why the developer withdrew their application,
I heard that they were successful in Coweta, but so I'd like to.
Yeah. So first of all, Coweta and Claremore had applications from the same developer. It was roughly about the same amount of land. At the end of March, I believe it was, the Beal Infrastructure, they withdrew their application, and they did not give a reason why. I will go into more detail Monday night, but what I will tell you is simply they didn't have the votes from the city council. It was going to be 4-1 no, and they didn't want that negative PR of being denied by a city council, so they just decided to go ahead and say, we're going to withdraw our application and we'll look at other communities, focus on them like Claremore. But there's some other reasons why I cannot talk about right now. It has to do with that picture. Oh, it's a doozy. I would.
Graduation to go to, so.
Okay. Well, somebody can record that, right? It'll be brought up Monday night, and then it's likely going to be on the news Tuesday.
Okay. We have a,
That's Monday, 6 p.m., City Hall. That's the public hearing, and as long as we're allowed to give a public comment, which I think they're going to have to, then it'll be brought up.
Is that what we're fighting today? Know whether you actually get to go?
I highly doubt that there'll be a judge assigned for the injunction. Yeah, but who knows?
question.
Monday night, 6 p.m., City Hall, but just pay attention to social media because the meeting could be postponed. There's a chance of that, but I think that it's going to be 6 p.m. Monday night, City Hall, and you'll need to get there super early. The meeting starts at 6, but in my opinion, you need to be there by 5.
You get there. If you get there and they are at capacity, it's because of like fire law. There's a reason, and whether that is justifiable, that's neither here nor there. There's nothing against you taking my place in a chair during your 3 minutes, meaning you can sign up. If you are not in that building at the time that it needs to be, open the door and say, I cannot get in and I want to speak, and I will give you my body as a person for the fire marshal so that you can get in there and you can sign up to speak. And I will one for one anybody who needs to speak, because it is important, and this is every taxpayer across the state. I mean, this isn't just one person. It's not just because you're in city limits you deserve, no. So if you are there, if that's what's going on, I hope you can live stream on Facebook, but seriously, open that door, because I will be letting you, you guys need to speak out.
Yeah, you had a question?
Me?
Yeah, you were there at the mic. Yeah.
Well, it was, but I sat down.
Oh yeah, well go ahead.
We are going to get a data center in Inola, and we don't want it. So I don't know who's coming in there. Do you?
No clue. I looked at land records. I couldn't find any what are called purchase sale agreements, but maybe it hasn't been filed yet.
Happened yesterday.
Okay, so it was filed. Yeah, I looked.
It's not, I don't know that it's been filed, but the transaction, the deal was made yesterday.
Yeah. I looked about a week ago,
The
and
company is called Potentia.
if you've got a name, there's a purchase sale agreement then.
Texas.
Yeah.
So how do we stop it? Is there any way to stop it now?
The best thing, this is the game plan, is you have to get a cohesive community, grassroots organization. And you need to have people on the same page in terms of, okay, we're going to develop a game plan. We're going to start to do records requests with the city. We're going to start to do records requests. I think the Port of Inola is a public trust.
It's Tulsa.
Is it
It's
Tulsa? Okay, yeah.
No, it's Port of Inola.
No, but it says Tulsa. It is Tulsa.
Yeah, so
It is Tulsa.
your ports are public trust. So like in Claremore, we have the Claremore Economic Development Authority. That's a public trust. They are subject to open records request, okay? Mid-America Industrial Park in Mays County, that's a public trust. It's subject to open records request. So City of Inola, the port,
Okay.
and Rogers County. File open records request, and you want to get email communications and get text message communications.
See, we have a smeltering plant too.
It takes time. You have to look at it from their perspective. But that's why I say you want to coordinate, because you don't want 5 people sending in records requests,
Right.
and the county clerk is getting inundated and it's slowing everything down. Because typically with the records request, what you want to do is you'll look through it and you'll say, aha, I found my needle in the haystack. I need to do another records request based on this. And so you want to have time for that clerk to handle future records requests. Yeah. And another thing too is with your city council, put in an agenda request. Okay, so like a public comment, it depends on every city council is kind of different. A lot of times they only allow a public comment for something that's an action item on the agenda. Sometimes it's open mic night at these places, right? You talk about what it is you want to talk about. But you can put an agenda request to talk about it, but that's going to take some preparation and maybe you do something with slides or something, you know, okay? Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Dean.
I wanted to add something, if I could, just for the benefit of those who are new. We've been battling a monster that lives offshore for several years called the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. They've advertised that they want to put in what's called smart cities. Many people here may think that that sounds desirable because we want our city to be smart, but that's not at all what they mean. They disguise their language. I did something that many of you may have already done. I went out, I'm not opposed to artificial intelligence. I'm old enough to remember in the 50s and 60s, I knew people that had artificial intelligence then, and they still do. They don't have real intelligence. I've been a book person. I like to read, study, learn for myself. I have no problem with having instant answers, but I don't think it's a substitute for really learning. But I have learned this. I typed in onto AI on my phone, which you can do too, and you may have a different AI than I have, but I typed in, how does the United Nations and the World Economic Forum plan to use data centers in America? I was shocked that it would be honest with me. It says that they want to use them to reach their sustainable goals that they have published both in 1993 for 2016 and then again for what's called 2030 coming up. They want to actually reduce the human population on the earth by 90%. If you think this is a dream or just a fairy tale, go investigate for yourself. But anyway, they want to use these data centers to accomplish these goals. When you look at all of this happening all across the country simultaneously, which if you haven't understood that word, that means at the same time, there's a real problem, and it's reason for us to stand and say, wait a minute. I intend to speak on Monday, if I'm allowed to. I may be arrested, but I'm going to say it's time to put this on hold so that some credible force outside of the city, outside of maybe the state, can look at this and investigate all the questions that we have about this. Why it's being used to help reach goals of someone outside of this country. Mm-hmm. I am one that believes in America as founded. I love that. I want to keep it that way. We're losing that, and we need to stand up. I have friends and some family members that will almost treat this like cancer, that I don't want to know if I've got cancer. I don't want to know. I want to know. Mm-hmm. I want to know, and I want to know who the enemy is so that we can stand against them. We have power if we use our voices collectively, and it means showing up in numbers.
Yep.
It's that simple. So I think that George, Tommy, and Ben gave us a tremendous gift when they helped create this nation. I think it's time for us to quit fiddling it away and start standing up and protecting it and taking it back for ourselves as the citizens of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It's time for us to unite and to not stay at home and say, I don't want a target on my back. I've had a target on my back for a long time. You can see how big I am. It's easy to see the target. Let's do something about this, but we need to be united. This is data. If we're going to win this war, we've got to use the data. Go to your phone and type in. Go to your computer and type in. I typed in the question, the same question again, from Wednesday night I typed in tonight. I got a different answer. Now, if AI is that unreliable, why do we even want it?
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yep.
Let's start using our gray matter that God gave us and start standing together to help fight.
Yeah. Thank you, Dean. To kind of play off that, you know, I always try to give a disclaimer when I speak to communities or people that, you know, haven't heard me talk before. You know, I am not anti-growth, because that's how a lot of times I'm painted. I'm not anti-data center. I'm not anti-transmission line. I'm not anti-renewable energy. There's a place for all this, and it can be done when the decision makers try to align with the community they're working with. And when you sign an NDA and you hide behind that for 2 years, that says that you never tried to align with your community, okay? Like in Coweta, the city manager called her people stupid. Well, you know, as Mr. Alan Prather, who's been on the news quite a bit, he's the big gentleman in the overalls and the big white beard, looks like Santa Claus. If we're such dullards and imbeciles, why did you have to hide this with an NDA for 17 months?
Yes.
And the other thing, Dean talked about AI, and I'm not anti-AI. I've been using AI since the mid-1980s. People look at me kind of funny when I say that, and I say it's true. I've been using actual intelligence since the mid-1980s, and actual intelligence says that taking 1.8 million solar panels and put them in Porter, Oklahoma is not the best use of our land, okay?
Hi, so I was speaking with a patient of mine the other day, and I said, yeah, I'm going to this meeting about the data centers that are coming up, and I said, what do you think they're building them for? Are they just building them for like cloud storage, or is it, you know? And she goes, well, haven't you heard? It's about chips. They're going to be putting chips in people, and they're going to store that information from those chips into these data centers. And I thought, oh, well, do you really think so? And so I got up my phone and I typed AI, and I said, are data centers being used to store human people's information? And it said yes. And now I don't, like you said, I don't know how accurate AI is.
Yeah.
But it got me to wonder, okay, are they going to store all of our information in these data centers? And is that why they're building so many of them? Because we have so many people? And I don't know, but is it just for iCloud storage?
No, this is not. There is some aspects that is for what you call cloud storage, but there's lots of different theories. What you're talking about gravitates more towards surveillance, okay?
Right.
And you hear a lot about the flock cameras and stuff like that. So surveillance is one idea that can be used for. My personal theory is this is a play on two things. The first one is it allows the big tech industry to enter the energy market, okay? Because again, on these, some of these, like in near Amarillo, Texas, it's called a data center and energy campus, okay? This is going to allow for nuclear power. That's the only way some of the stuff's going to work. But the biggest thing that makes the most sense to me is it's a play on water rights. If you look at Project Clydesdale, that request from Washington County number 2, which they're getting the water from City of Tulsa, is 7.2 million gallons per day. The one in Coweta was 5.4 million gallons per day. Claremore was somewhere in the neighborhood. Sand Springs is somewhere in that neighborhood. The one in Stillwater was 1.3 million gallons of water per day per building. There's 6 buildings, which when you factor it out, it's roughly 8 million gallons of water per day. We have a law on the books that went into effect in 2013. It was called Water for 2060, state law. And the goal of that is to use as much water in 2060 as we did in 2012. We can't meet that expectation. So we're not even following our own laws as a state. And then when you look at, I said water rights. Nebraska just recently sued Colorado over water. California has been in long, drawn-out battles for several years now on the Colorado River over water rights. There's a couple of other states in the southeast part of the country that have sued one another, and these lawsuits take decades. Okay, it's about water rights. That's, in my opinion, that's what it's all about.
Can I add to
Yeah.
that too, Darren?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've consistently asked since he's been, in his fight longer than I have, is what do you know about HIPAA compliancy with this infrastructure? Because that is a very specific engineering spec relevant to these data center infrastructures. Meaning if you have a data center at a hospital, you have a data center at a courthouse, those security measures are going to be different at different scales and different levels. Now, today I fell and was talking to some people, and this is just the text that I had sent based on our conversation, because I wanted to kind of be able to visualize or think about the physical, what is this used for? What is our streaming, our usage, the physical infrastructure of that in comparison to what we're thinking about, machine learning AI centers. When they're talking about a campus, the student is the AI, it is the computer itself. But this study that I sent, it's the consideration of commercial hyperscale versus scientific research. When you're thinking about AI curing diseases, you can look to existing university data centers. They're not going to use a fraction, a tenth of the power that this sees, and they're going to supply 10 plus years of innovation in medical discovery and research. But if you think of the physical space, I'm trying to find this exact line, I think it's 4,000 square feet. That is the physical space to store every written work of mankind in every single language multiple times. 7 petabytes of storage. Okay, there are beyond that probably like 80 of these can fit into one of the data centers. I put some documents back over there. One of the plans has building 7 on it. Go take a look at some of that stuff. These are, for a good analogy, like this horse is meant to breed. It is coming in to stay in and spread and run wild across the plains. That's the only reason I can think to call it a Mustang. So.
Okay, so
HIPAA compliancy is a consideration that has not been raised or addressed in any way.
yeah, I've also seen multiple videos on it and things that they don't know. Missouri is already cutting off water. I didn't really know that Missouri actually gave water to surrounding states, but they do, and they've shut that off. And they said Oklahoma's already missing some. They're also trying to talk with Lake of the Ozarks, trying to get them to cough up water, and their city council's like, I don't think we're going to, but they're, powwowing about it. So they're not bringing up, in reality, the water is the problem. It's already draining Missouri's water.
Yeah.
So
Water rights.
yeah, and they already cut off Oklahoma. We were getting some water from them for something. I don't know what, but they've cut off Oklahoma, and they said now Oklahoma's struggling with needing water wherever they were giving it to them at. So as you know, if they're already shut down Missouri's water, it's just a matter of time till none of us have water, because at the top of that paper, it was on a chart that I had. It said that Mays over here used 1.1 billion gallons of water, and then 253 million gallons of water went back into the Neosho River as wastewater.
Yeah.
So, they're already messing with all the water.
Yeah.
So they tell you all that nonsense. And then another video was talking about that, they have a lot of sound problems, not counting the part where they say it's going to be killing off the people with, all the pollution in the air and the cancer people, and not only just in Claremore, but all the surrounding counties will also be getting all these poisons and killing us off. But there's also a sound that comes from them. They said it's loud, but this guy was actually doing a study on it. There's a larger section of that sound that you cannot hear, and it's causing seizures and heart attacks. Yeah.
Pressure level.
Yeah, and they're, basically killing everybody off, basically, kind of like what Dean said.
Yeah. So I'll address two things. The water, I'm highly familiar with what you're talking about. So Google Mays County prior, the numbers on that, they withdraw from the source 1.1 billion over the last couple of years. That's each year, 1.1 billion, give or take. And then the discharge, the waste, give or take 250 million gallons. That's in the filtration system. They use a unique filtration system, reverse osmosis, and it's technical, but it's called a permeate to feed ratio, where it's around 75%. So what that means is, for every 100 gallons that they withdraw from the source, 25 of it is rejected. That's called the brine, and that goes for treatment and then is returned back to the Neosho River. That water is an industrial wastewater according to the EPA, but here's what we're missing on the figures. They withdraw 1.1 billion on average or for the year and return less than 250 million gallons. What's actually consumed, that's how they cool the technology, is the last couple of years has been 815 million gallons of water and 833 million gallons of water. That's consumed. It's not returned from the source. Okay? That's huge. That's the part that is, on average, is around 2.25 million gallons of water per day that's consumed. Okay? It's gone. It's evaporation. So it's not returned in any way. So, yes, sir. Oh, and go ahead and come to the mic, but I'll address the sound. Yeah.
That's exactly what I come up for.
Yeah, you're talking about the sound?
I recently retired.
Yeah.
And now I'm going out fishing, and I got a hold of this here. Like you said, prior is using 3 million gallons a day, or 3 million, whatever.
Yeah, they withdraw from the source 3 million,
right.
yeah.
So what impact is that having on our fishing, our hunting, and all that?
Yeah.
There's a whole, what is it, a couple of 100 million hunters and fishermen out there.
Yeah, I'll address that, but on the sound, this is where you guys in Inola, if your council will listen. So there's a lot of concern about noise pollution because the data center doesn't stop 24/7. 3 o'clock in the morning, it's running. What they'll put in city ordinances, or what if it's a planned unit development, or if the sales pitch is, it's going to be anywhere from 50 to 60 dBs, and that's what they'll say. Sometimes they might put dBAs. Sound has different measurements. What you guys need to look for is the octave. That's the low frequency hum. That is going to be an octave band analysis that's measured in dBc and dBz. If you were to put that as an ordinance or in a planned unit development, that developer will say, okay, we'll go somewhere else. We'll try to add on in Claremore, work with old John Ferry. Might be bad for people in Claremore, but it might help people in Inola. So if you put that as a restriction, that developer's likely to say, we're going to walk away. Because one of the things that helped Coweta said, guess what? We've caught on to your scheme, and we're going to make you you will not generate electricity through gas. That's another reason why they walked away. Okay, the tourism is what you're talking about. Okay, this is an economic development project. Okay, in any form of economic development, where you're talking about a Walmart or a data center or a gas station, you're going to have pluses and minuses, and you have to make sure that the pluses outweigh the minuses. Let me give you an example. I was in Montana spring break week. Huge state. Their top two forms of commerce are agriculture and tourism, hunting and fishing, recreation, okay? When I was there, I looked it up. Never been, but I looked up the drought monitor in Montana. 67% of the state was in a drought. 28% of the state was abnormally dry. So that means less than 5% of the entire state of Montana, huge state, is either not in a drought or not abnormally dry. And what are their two main forms of commerce? Agriculture and tourism, which relies on water. So when you're going to put in all these data centers that are quite literally draining and using millions of gallons of water per day, what sort of impact is it going to have on those two sectors?
Right, and there's major lakes and dams around here that are coming up short of water right now.
Yeah.
And that's your hydroelectricity too.
Yeah.
That's the generation just as much.
Yeah.
Or they can't come out of no water.
So Sand Springs is facing one. The water source there is Skytook. Skytook is habitually low. And so when you drain that and you're going to start extracting 5 million gallons of water per day, what's that going to do to the recreation dollars? So again, those pluses and minuses, these people making the decisions are only looking at the pluses. You did not take into consideration the minuses. If you were to require an independent economic impact analysis, they'd walk away.
That's facts.
But the truth is, we have no idea. We've never seen the impact at this scale across an entire state of a resource vampire coming in at this level.
Georgia,
those
Virginia.
numbers. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
3 days without water, you die.
But
Right,
in
right.
Oklahoma, I mean, yeah.
Well, and just kind of expand on that. I know you want to ask a question, but when this was all coming out, our governor and lieutenant governor said, "Oh, we got all the water to make this work." Now, and you see all these developments coming around Tulsa, and the city of Tulsa has said, "Well, actually, we only have room for 2 hyperscale data centers," and that's Project Clydesdale because they're the ones supplying the water, and that's Project Anthem in Catoosa. So they say, we got all the water in the world to make this work. And then they start to say, not so fast, my friend.
The farmers are already having a hard time already trying
Yeah.
to compete with the water rights, let alone cattle. So there's 2 other impacts right there.
Yeah, and when you start impacting water availability, what's that going to impact? Cost of food, food security.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's not being taken into consideration. That's the message that I try to get across.
That's going to help them reduce the population.
Maybe. Yes, ma'am.
Mine is very simple, and Amber, I apologize because you probably covered this. What about the county commissioners? What role have they have? I haven't really heard any of that.
Yeah, and back me up if I'm incorrect on anything. So what I do know is that at least one county commissioner was approached in October. And it is our understanding they were presented with what's called a confidentiality agreement, which is an NDA, which is a secrecy document. We can see that it was presented from the city. Technically, it was CEDA, Claremore Industrial Development Authority. It was presented to them. And so as a former compliance officer, auditing background, it's called reconciliation. I can see that that record was presented to the county from the city side. So I should be able to file a records request to the county and get that record. I did that and they say, no records exist. What happened to it?
There's been a lot of that too. A lot of.
So what happened to it? Why is it that record doesn't exist?
Somebody lost?
What? What?
Probably intentionally did not maintain the record.
Between the desk and the wall.
So let me use you an example to clarify. That same exact document that was presented to one of the county commissioners in Rogers County, it was also presented to the Coweta mayor and vice mayor. And there were multiple records requests trying to get all NDAs in the history of Coweta, okay? And only one keeps coming back. That's with the city manager. There were 3 records requests asking for all NDAs at the city of Coweta, and only one comes out. And Mr. Prather, the man in the overalls, the white beard, he made the Washington Post. He's all over the place. He requests an agenda time, Coweta City Council, and rants and raves about how this is, not standard practice, blah, blah, blah. The Coweta vice mayor afterwards goes on to Facebook and says, well, I signed an NDA Really? Because we've made multiple requests and it does not appear. We're going to go down Monday morning and file a records request and see if that NDA appears. And we did, and sure enough, here it comes. It was withheld. The reason is, it's the same document presented to your county commissioner. It says it cannot be released without consent of bill infrastructure. That's in violation of state statute.
But the county commissioner had to give approval as the taxing entity that's going to be impacted to the Local Development Act Review Committee. And so when they're meeting one-on-one individually with any of our county commissioners, and then any of those county commissioners go to the public meeting 4 months later, and then pretend, it's smoke and mirrors, and there's no public comment, and there's no anything to be allowed. They've already made their minds. I mean, it's the votes cast before they, started.
And the ultimate role of the county commissioner is to help negotiate what's called the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes. And what that means is the property taxes, that's part of the tax incremental district, those are abated. And it's the county's responsibility to collect those taxes. Therefore, it's the county's authority to say, okay, we're going to allow this entity to not pay taxes, to abate the property taxes. And it's a trade-off. They do a payment in lieu of instead of paying the property taxes, which it's a significant discount.
So you need like the health board, you need Sequoia schools, you need Oologah schools, you need the fair board, because we have that specific taxing jurisdiction in Rogers County for the fair. That's, it's like 0.5%, but all of the heads of those entities had to come together. One thing I want to note on that, the rural fire department was in that jurisdiction. They would have been an impacted entity. They de-annexed them as a taxing jurisdiction and then removed them as a representative from the LDARC, like from that committee before making the recommendation. And part of that is, in my idea, the money's funding the city fire department. And when John Ferry signs an NDA as our city manager, when he then reaches out to our fire chief, he can say, you're under an NDA because you're a city employee. I signed on behalf of the city of Claremore. You can't do that to the rural fire district. And when you have people in other counties across Oklahoma who are turning down huge donations from Google and data center developers for exactly this in those rural fire departments, there's a chief that was on the news for that. That is an important consideration to why was this all happening last year before a data center ever got mentioned.
Yep. Did you have another? So, and while we get the next speaker up, there's one lady there, and then, but I'll just kind of, let me expand on that document that was presented. Okay, I've looked at it. It's the same one that was presented to the people in Coweta, and I have the Assistant District Attorney of Wagner County's feedback on it, and he says that it's quote unquote not compliant with the law, quote unquote runs afoul of the Open Meetings Act. Quote unquote, any signature would be legally problematic. That's a reason why they don't want to give me that document. Yeah, well, when you capture your city manager calling their people, quote unquote, not very smart, and she's poking fun at a man who's on supplemental oxygen, who's in need of a double lung transplant, that gets your approval rating in the toilet real quick.
And John Ferry's calling me ludicrous. John Ferry's calling me slanderous.
So, go ahead.
It's a trend.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and comments, but also I'd like to mention also that we come to these meetings from Inola, and there's probably several from Inola, but please come to our city council meetings. It's every first and third Monday evening, and there's public comment possibility in the beginning. And this with PSO rates, there's now a petition. Wonderful Representative Tom Gann has started it. And because this melter will increase everybody's rates in Oklahoma, electricity rates. So everybody should go and sign, and it's stoptheinolasmelter.com/intervene. And then if you scroll down on the page, you can fill out the information. And lots of signatures are needed by Monday, this coming Monday. So please, everybody, plus please sign the Stop the Animal Smelter regular petition. There's both Facebook site but we also, and I have the pages for grand jury petition for Rogers County and Mays County even. I have them papers with me, so anybody can come and sign. And then afterwards, after it's convened, which may take a little time, but affidavits are needed then. How these things will affect each one of us and our properties. But I wanted to comment, you mentioned about the effects of the, so I can't help thinking of, Oklahoma tornadoes and storms and all that PFAS that's on the blades of turbines and on that land can never be used for farming or anything else, ever again. What's your comment? And then maybe I'll take my other, then I read 4,000 data centers in the US. 300 in China, and they are already surveying all the. Little Finland has 5 million people. They have a little over 100, so they can easily survey all the. And they are developing 6G for the whole world. But then, regarding what Dean was saying about the globalist agenda, just everybody look up Dr. Anna Mihalcea, MIHALCEA, and self-assembling nanoparticles. They are in dental anesthetics, local anesthetics, they are in all COVID shots, all vaccinations, everything. And they are sprayed on us from the skies. I'm personally injured by dental anesthetics because what's in them. So that's my, what's your comment to that? I mean, 4,000 data centers in there. Is that the digital prison also?
Yeah, I'll kind of answer it in reverse order, but again, it's I don't think there's a good answer for this massive build out, because if we look at technology, we look at what's in the palm of our hand today. You go back 30 years ago, that would probably take maybe not a room quite this size, but at least half this size of computers to equal what's in the palm of our hand right now. So the trend with technology, particularly with computers, is things tend to get smaller, right? Or more capable with the same size, right? So it doesn't make sense to, and I know I'm exaggerating here, but to put one on every street corner, because that's not the trend with data. That's not the trend with computers and technology. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then, because there are ways to do it, like Amber talked about, that can be much more efficient, require less power, less water, and do what we need to do. You mentioned the agricultural land with some of these projects. Solar in particular, those are, give or take, they're about a 40-year lease. Sometimes they're a 30-year lease with a 10-year renewal, or a 20-year lease with a 20-year renewal. They're on average, when you look at the renewal options, they're about 40 years. That land's not coming back. When you've had solar panels on it for 40 years, you're changing the entire ecosystem of the soil by impacting the water rate to the soil and also the temperature of the soil. So you're completely changing it. So it's just not going to be returned. The biggest problem with the wind turbines is they're good for less than 20 years. That's if straight line winds or tornado doesn't take them out. And then so what do you do with them? Okay, at that point. There is a recycling process where they can be used to help fortify concrete, help to make roads and things like that. But in the state of Wyoming, which has a lot of coal mining, they've actually approved for broken down turbine in smaller pieces to be used as backfill there. But yeah, there's just not really a good use for them, because I can go to a place in Coyle, Oklahoma, where they have decommissioned turbine parts that it's what's called a wind turbine graveyard, and they're just sitting there. and they're grinding and mulching them up quite literally outside. And we have a researcher there now that can stand with something that's about the size of the old film rolls, the cartridge you used to get, you take into the store and get developed. He can stand there with something like that, and he can actually collect particles that's blowing in the wind. Okay, so that's, drifting onto their hay meadow. That's going to have an impact on cattle. Imagine if you're a cow and you're sitting out there, large eye, right? That stuff's blowing into your eye. It's an irritant. An irritant will cause disease. Okay, so think of that. Yeah.
I would add to that too, when you're thinking kind of like your physical consumption and your needs for data, it's, imagine like a library for like cloud storage. You need to rent that movie for the time you're watching it, then it goes back there and the service, through and through those cables. This is a film factory. This is taking what that movie is, smashing it down, and then remaking it 1,000 times constantly all the time. So when you see other countries, an example that I thought of in this is they have small, like about the size of this podium, data centers in their backyards at their houses that store much more than they themselves would ever be needing or supporting, but in kind of bigger social consideration, perhaps a fair physical space. They then take that heat to fuel their greenhouses during the winter. They then find ways to work together to meet these needs. There's no need for this. There is no need for these level of hyperscale commercial. It is a physical manifestation of wealth and equality.
Can I mention one thing? I can't forget President Trump sitting there in his cabinet meeting and laughing about 6G and saying, oh yeah, and then they say that then you can look into a human's body. And of course, that's where it's going.
Yeah.
And now he's there in China with Palantir.
Yes, surveillance is part of it. I don't, the truth probably lies somewhere in between, right? That's always the best answer, right? So, but yeah, surveillance is part of it. Cannot be denied. Go ahead.
I just have one quick comment. I know recently I saw it online, they were discussing the solar panel farms.
You can't use the F word in here. They're not farms.
Yeah, not
because you show me a solar farmer and I'll show you a solar farm. They don't exist.
Exactly.
Solar power plant.
Yeah.
It's like a coal plant.
And this is why, because we know firsthand. Somebody put online that was just barren land. It wasn't really being farmed, and that's BS because we purchased hay from the mom and pop feed store between Claremore and Pryor that had contracted the hay from that field for years and years and years, and he square belted a lot of it, and square belts are very hard to find in the horse world because it's more profitable and easier to do round bells. So immediately when he lost that lease, and I'm all for private property rights, but when you're totally going from agricultural to something like industrial, then I have a little more of a problem that the neighboring landowners don't have a say. But anyway, he had to immediately scramble and go to Kansas to purchase hay to resell for that year. He's hoping to find an Oklahoma supplier, but again, it's not easy because it's all contracted up with all the hay shortages.
Yeah.
What I was going to bring up, two things. Back to the water deal, we have a neighbor that's on the water board for Rural Water District 2, which I think I saw that's where the data center would be located.
For Claremore?
Yeah. The city's trying to de-annex it so that they can supply. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I know a little bit about it. So technically, the total property area is in 2 of the rural water districts of Rogers County. It's in 2 and number 3. Most of it's in number 3.
Okay.
And they are both, at least that land within the rural water district, because it's a jurisdiction thing, okay? It gets kind of weird. They're going to be de-annexed because I spoke to both managers. They said we don't have the capacity to serve them. But yet, we're being told by John Fury that it's going to be air-cooled. It's not going to use water. If RWD number 2 and number 3, both managers say we don't have the capacity, whether he's talking about volume or infrastructure, sounds like to me they're going to use water to cool it. That was their original plan. If you are in the planning stages, I believe at that time it was for 22 months, and you have this plan going to use water to cool it, and then word leaks out that, hey, there's a data center and there's a lot of negative pushback, and then you just change plans, say, oh, we're going to do air-cooled. We changed our plans. That's fake news.
Very transparent,
But
yeah.
Water District 2 buys it from the city of Claremore. The bill is right back there on that table. You can take a look. So it's coming from the same, straw, metaphorically. Like,
Right.
it's going to be the same.
Right. Well,
But the bottom line is they're going to use water to cool it.
I'm not shocked on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. I was present at the travesty of when they handcuffed you, and my husband was getting ready to have major surgery on your court date, or we would have been down there in support of you. We made this morning's court appearance just as a show of support. Again, I don't put anybody on a pedestal. I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time. But I think it is very important that we try to get everyone we can, for people like you or Ron or Amber, anybody that'll help fight this, no matter how if they're pro or con the data center. My biggest thing is getting lied to. Now, I'm not a city resident, but I'm a county resident, and I get City of Claremore Electric. But the part that boggles my mind is how they could have that city council meeting a week or a week and a half ago, whatever it was, after standing room only at the college that I was there, to have that in a room that can only hold 65 plus. My husband and I went, we were there 20 minutes early, didn't make it in. So this next meeting Monday night is going to be in that same small little building?
That's our understanding.
And so what keeps them from just packing it half full of BOP support?
Well, it was very interesting. The next day,
Yeah.
We have no
went down to
recourse?
the museum to the state candidate meet and greet.
Right. I heard you say that this.
Walking past Fury, giving him a big smile, making sure he sees me, and then having the lights go out during their speeches.
So we have no recourse to have them have that in a larger building? I mean,
About the only thing you're going to be able to do is contact, since you don't have a council representative, you can email them all you want, but contact your state representative, your state senator, contact the Attorney General's office.
I did contact the Attorney General's office on that in another matter as far as opening.
Well, one thing that gets me about it is it's a public meeting, and I had a pretty good drive from Mounds.
Yes, we appreciate
And I got there early, and I drank a bottle of water. It's a public meeting, and they don't have a public bathroom?
That's a violation.
Yeah, that should be a violation.
That's a public safety issue.
Yeah.
Because I had to walk across the street over to the Boomerang Diner to go use the restroom.
Go to the fire department.
I asked the police, and they said, go over to the bank. And I said, it's 5:30, the bank's closed. Too bad.
Oh my gosh.
So I'll just walk around in Claremore.
Hey, Darren, I have one other thing.
Yeah.
There was
Just,
a tree by the fire, by the
Well, I've been arrested once. I got a target.
I played college sports. I pitched baseball.
Yeah.
I love to throw curveballs. I think we need to throw John Fury and the city management a curveball. They keep saying that they're out of money, no money, no money, no money, no money. Let's do this. Let's have them lease the streets out in Claremore to the auto manufacturers and rename the streets to Ball Joint Proving Ground.
Yeah.
Do you get the point?
It'd be sponsored, yeah.
You get the point? Yeah, we can make some money that way.
Yeah.
So it's really important for us to show up. I'm going to speak if I can, and then I'll give my seat up to somebody else who wants to come in and talk.
Yep.
All right.